It feels like every company has been developing AI tools in the photography world. And I'm not even talking about generative AI, which is a whole different can of worms. Instead, I'm talking about AI photography tools like AI culling, AI editing, and AI retouching. Software that makes your editing process faster and lets you focus on more of the creative parts of photography and less on the tedious parts like retouching. While I'm still trying to dial in finding my favorite AI culling and AI editing tool, I've landed on this AI retouching tool that not only have I been impressed with the results, it's actually made me more money and has saved me time. See, I've been looking around for months now for a good AI retouching tool, and I was super pumped when I found out about Evoto AI. So much so that I reached out to them and I said, hey, do you guys want to sponsor a video on the channel where I can showcase the features of your guys' software? And they said yes. So huge shout out to Evoto AI. And that's enough with the foreplay. Let's go ahead and jump into how good this software is. So diving into the most important part, retouching. Let me show you guys a few examples of how I use this software and why I'm loving it. We'll start off with an example of a portrait photo. I'll use one of my graduation portrait photos as the first example so I can walk you guys through some of the features. So starting off, let's jump into the retouching tab right here. And you can see like right here that there's a ton of different things that this software can do. And the first one we're gonna jump into is blemish removal, which is like 90% of the job. So if we go ahead and zoom in to her face, we'll see that she actually has a lot of freckles, which is perfectly fine. We don't want to get rid of those. And as you turn up the freckle and acne, look at that. It automatically removes it so well. Now, I don't want to go ahead and get rid of all of her freckles. They look nice, so I'm going to go ahead and turn down the intensity of this tool here and turn freckles all the way off. And it still does a little bit. It removes a few freckles here and there. I think that's totally acceptable. And this is significantly more useful on a client with a lot of blemishes on their faces. This like immediately takes care of it. And as you can see, if we scroll down, this would do something similar for the body. If you turn up the body blemish slider, going to remove all of those blemishes. But again, because these are all freckles, we're gonna go ahead and actually turn it down for this client right here. Next up is gonna be the face shine tool. This is super useful if the client is a little bit sweaty and there's a lot of light reflecting off and you don't want that distraction. As you can see, 0 all the way up to 100. Makes a pretty nice difference. I'm gonna just go ahead and turn it on somewhere in the middle, 50. Just to go ahead and bring that down just a little bit. And if your client has forehead wrinkles, this will also take care of that pretty handily as well. One thing I really like about this software is how well it can deal with things like eye wrinkles and dark circles under eyes. So let's go ahead and turn that up and see what that does. Takes away some of that edge under the eyes there. And of course, eye bags down here as well. Let's say if we turn this up to 75, go ahead and show you how kind of drastic that before and after looks. Again, with retouching, the goal isn't to make them look like somebody else, but rather just taking away some of those distracting features that might be accentuated by the lighting of the day, especially if you're doing natural light portraitures like these. As we go down, if we want to bring down those smile lines just a little bit around the cheeks, like if I turn this up, you'll see the difference that it makes. Right, just a little bit here. If I turn it all the way up, you can really see what it's doing, right? Taking away, again, those distracting dark edges. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this down just a little bit. Again, with my retouching, I like to do a little bit more of a minimalistic approach. I don't want to make them feel like they look like a completely different person, but it's nice to take away those little edges that aren't adding to the photo. And there are so many more neat features in here. Neck wrinkles, this happens always. And this is just really nice. Turn it up to 50, turn it up to 100. You can see that it just kind of takes away some of those hard lines and edges on the neck. This is especially useful for photos where the subject is looking over their shoulders. So we're gonna go ahead and put that on 50 and leave that be. And then the next one here is also super useful, double chin. So it does something really neat. If I turn it all the way up to 100, you'll see that what it does is it kind of adds a little bit of burning and dodging and burning here, right? To accentuate the jawline a little bit more, right? So if I show you, this is the before, this is the after, right? It just makes that line a little bit more solid, really separates the face, really makes it more distinct. And in some scenarios, depending on the angle, the software will actually do a little bit of physical warping to kind of bring up the edges a little bit too. just to create that distinct line, and I think it looks really nice. Okay, so that is the blemish removal tab. Let's jump down to skin retouching. This is another super useful tab. Right here we have the smooth face skin, dodge and burn. If I turn it all the way up, you can kind of see just how crazy the effect is, right? I mean, that is doing quite a lot of work there. I don't usually like to turn this all the way up because it's a little bit too intense in my opinion, but if you turn it up to like 30 to 50, it does a really nice effect. And again, we can do a little bit of face smoothing here. Show you what 100 looks like, right? Gives you that baby skin face look. We're actually just gonna turn that down to somewhere around 25. And I like to match that with the body skin. If we turn it all the way up to 100, you'll see what it looks like, right? Very smoothed out. We're gonna turn that right down to about 25, just to give it a subtle little bit of a, improvement without making it, too intense. So again, before, after. Next up is a skin texture setting here, which I usually like throwing on the satin look. Doesn't do too much. You can see the difference if I go from none to matte to satin to dewy. It just adds a little bit of that glow. I think satin is usually where I like to land. Still adds a little bit of contour and highlighting to the face without going overboard. And then furthermore, there's additional really useful features here like unify face complexion. If we turn that all the way up, and turn that all the way down. Unifies the colors a little bit, right? So that way there's not splotchiness. Same thing when it comes to the body complexion as well. If you turn that all the way up, turn it back all the way down. This one's showing obviously a little bit more intense. You can see that it's bringing kind of the skin tones to match all together. Now, I don't like turning that too high up. I like to throw it around 25 and 25. Just does a little bit of work there, but I still like, the shading of the original photo, but it just adds a little bit more of that retouched look. And of course down here, there's some really crazy settings. You can change the complexion completely of your subject to super pale to really tan, right? It's actually really cool what this can do. And this is actually super useful if you're shooting in lighting environments like backlit, where you're getting a lot of side lighting and your skin tones aren't looking consistent throughout all of your photos. You can actually use this feature here to kind of get them to match each other a little bit better in a set. I typically have this turned off, but it's nice to know that I have that in the back of my pocket. And as we go down, there's two other features right here. There's skin radiance, which brings up kind of the glow. I don't really like turning this up just because I'm personally not a fan of the effect, but if that is your style, it's super useful. And then if you look down here for rosy complexion, right, this just adds a little bit of pink to the skin, right? You probably only want to move within like 0 and 20. Anything past that, you're getting quite a bit much there. But for this photo, I'm gonna go ahead and leave it off. Next up, let's go ahead and jump down to the eyes tab. And this one is really nice because it lets you bring up the brightness in the eyes. If you take a look here, right, if I go ahead and just crank this all the way up, you can kind of see the difference there. Really, really crisp eyes, right? Really draws your attention there. However, one tip in retouching is don't overdo the eyes because it can look a little bit uncanny. So if you bring it down to maybe about, let's say 33, that does a great job of just making the eyes pop just a little bit without overdoing it too much. And there's also a neat little feature here called removing red veins from the eyes, right? Does a pretty good job there. Depending on the subject, some people have, more red veins and they're not a fan of it and they like that to be removed. It's as easy as just dragging the slider up. And actually a good example of that is I'm gonna hop over into the separate sample photo provided by Evoto, and you can actually take a look, right? Here's a good example. If you see these thin, high contrast red veins, if they're a little bit distracting, not a part of the look you're going for, especially if you're doing commercial or editorial work, right? Remove red veins, boom, just like that. After, before, and after. It does a really incredible job, and it's literally as easy as dragging a slider. It's kind of mind-blowing. So let's jump to another feature here that's actually super useful, hair. This one is the bane of my existence when I go to retouch photos, especially when my clients are like, hey, my hair's looking a little frizzy. We live in Florida. The humidity is really high. So in a 1 hour shoot, your hair is probably good for about 20 minutes. And then the last 40 minutes of photos, your hair gets quite frizzy. Now this works best with plain backgrounds. I've noticed that with textured backgrounds, sometimes it can look a little bit funky. here is a good example of when it does work really well though. So if I go ahead and zoom out a little bit so you can see all of her hair, right? You see flyaways, little bits here, little bits there, right? A little bit up here. It's not too distracting. This is by far not that bad. I've had way worse in photos I've taken, but look at how good of a job this does. If we just turn remove stray hairs all the way up to 100, check this out. Look at that result. So if I do a before and then an after, pay attention. Look at the shoulder here. Look at the edges right here where, you know, it catches the light, especially up at the top of the head where the light is, it's being backlit, right? The subject's being backlit. These hairs are super fine and they're catching all the light. And if you look at the before, take a look at that. There's a bunch of tiny little flyaways here. And when I let go of the space bar to show you the after, check out how good of a job it does. Before, after. Now it definitely softens up some of these edges. So, you know, if you're looking for that super high res look, if you're doing editorial stuff, this might not be the best way to go about it, but as a one-click solution, this does a great job. And you can always dial down the intensity to somewhere around like 30, and it still does a great job of getting rid of some of those distractions without doing too much to the image. All right, so that was a natural light outdoor portrait session that I edited using Evoto AI, but let's jump over to an indoor corporate headshot session that I did on a white backdrop for one client recently. And if you take a look at this photo, right, pretty good photo right off the bat. This is just edited in Lightroom in terms of colors. I haven't done any, you know, blemish removal, skin retouching, or anything like that yet, but let me jump into it and kind of just show you a little bit, right? If I just want to do a little bit of retouching, let me speed through this so I can show you. Okay, so I did a little bit of what I would normally do for this, right? For a male subject, they're a little bit older, so you don't want to make their skin look like completely baby-faced because it would look a little bit unnatural. I did just a little bit of work here. Take a look at how well it handles, right? Like removing forehead wrinkles, right? Making them just a little bit more subtle, more finer, so they're less intense, right? Removing the darkness from the bags under the eyes. Look at just how much that's doing. And I only applied, you know, a light amount of retouching here. You could really go all the way if you want to completely remove the bags, right? If you want to super smooth the skin, right? Like you could take years off of an image just like that, super easily, dragging a few sliders. I want to bring it back to a level where I personally think that the image looks best at. Right here. And really, I wanted to show you guys two features. So first of all, in the latest update of Evoto that just came out, I think literally a few days ago here in March 2024, they've also added eyeglass glare removal. This is a huge problem anytime I shoot headshots where people, wear glasses. And oftentimes we have to take those glasses off just to avoid the issues of, eyeglass glare. But then you're not really representing who the person is, right? If they wear glasses all the time, bit weird that they don't have their glasses on in their portrait photos. So we left it on here, but then you have this issue, right? You see the soft boxes reflecting in the corner of the glasses here. You see a little bit of glare here, and of course you see a big soft box right there. That's super distracting. You could get away with this, sure, but it's best to remove it. Now, if you were gonna do this in Photoshop, right now, the easiest way to do it would be using like AI generative fill and kind of experimenting on it. But again, imagine if you had like 50 of these photos with eyeglass glares. That would take so much time. Instead, check out this function right here. If you go into the blemishes section and you scroll down, you'll see glasses glare removal beta. Look what happens when I turn it from 0 to 100. That's incredible. That's so much better, right? If you look at it before, after, look at how much that does just dragging a slider. I'm telling you guys, this software is gonna save you so much time. Another thing is, if you have a dirty background, this also does handle it very well. Now, I did a great job. My background was super clean, so I didn't have this issue, but I did want to show you guys an example. So I pulled Evoto sample photo here, right? Background looks pretty clean. The top part is pretty clean, but of course, if you look at the ground over here, there's a lot of footprints and it's a little bit dirty down here, right? You don't want that in your prints. You don't want to deliver that to your client. So what you can actually do is if you go over to the background tab right over here, you can see that at the top, there's a clean, solid backdrop button right here. You can go ahead and click it. And again, it's a one button fix, right? Look at this after, look at this before, right? And it's only affecting the background. It's not doing anything else to any other parts of the image. And this would work well for if, if the background up here was a little bit dirty or a little bit messed up. it does such a good job. Something I deal with a lot is going to be clothing that is wrinkled. Now, this isn't actually that bad at all, but sometimes people will show up to their photo shoots with either like their graduation gown still wrinkly because they just took it out of the package for the very first time, or maybe their dress pants are creased or something like that. And again, that's a very standard thing you would retouch up in Photoshop after every shoot. It takes a lot of time, it's tedious, it's not a part of the creative photography that you want to work on, and it just really eats into your time. Easy fix, go into the clothing tab right here. This is already turned up. If I undo this is what you've been looking at the whole time, right? It's been pretty good. It's there's a little bit of wrinkling, not too bad. If I turn this off, this is what it was originally, right? Now if I turn it back on, show you the before and after. Look at how much that's doing right there. Some of the bigger creases here, right? The AI is kind of like leaving it. But some of these finer creases, they're just gone. That's just so good. And of course, if you want to leave the coarser creases because they look more natural, you can go ahead and put that back in, but only remove fine wrinkles, or vice versa. If you don't want to remove fine wrinkles, but you want to remove coarse wrinkles, you can do that as well. You can kind of experiment around with it to get the proper look. And when I'm talking about this is a faster process, I mean this is a faster process, because what I haven't showed you is presets. If you go over here, you can see that there's a bunch of presets that Evoto provides for you, but there's also my presets. And under here, you can actually save the settings that you apply to your photos as a preset, right? So for example, I have a standard retouch preset right here. So what I do when I finish editing a set of photos for a client, I dump them into Evoto. I would create a new project for that client set of photos, hop in here, and then I would just go ahead and go into my presets, select my standard retouch preset that I've built myself, and then I would just go ahead and select all of them with Command A, hit sync, go ahead and hit save, and my retouching has been applied to every single photo in that set. Here's some quick math, right? If I normally take, let's say, 3 minutes to retouch a photo, and there's 100 photos, that's 300 minutes. That's 5 hours I'm spending retouching a single client set of 100 photos. Using Evoto, I can just go ahead and apply my standard retouching to every single one of my photos and spend maybe around 10, 15, 30 seconds reviewing every single one of those photos, right? Hop in here, zoom in, make sure everything looks good, right? Look around, and then move on to the next photo. This is where I think AI retouching really changes the game, and that's why I'm saying that this AI retouching software is making me money. Because now, instead of spending those 5 hours retouching a single set of photos for clients, I can spend those 5 hours doing a whole nother client shoot or 2, right? If I'm shooting 1 hour sessions, now I can shoot 3 sessions instead of 1 in the same time it would take me to shoot and edit 1 session. And now I'm tripling the amount of volume I can do. There was a time when I would get really stressed out because when I do graduation photos, I get a lot of bookings in the month leading up to graduation day. And it gets to a point where I'm like, I have too many bookings, I can't take any more because I won't be able to turn these photos around in time for these grads. Now with AI retouching, it cuts down on so much time that I can like double or triple my capacity, which obviously means I get to double or triple my revenue for that time period. That is a huge game changer. Okay, now before I get into the cost, I actually just remembered I want to show you guys one more thing, which is going to be the edit tab, the color adjustments tab. You can also use Evoto like your standard photo editing software like Lightroom. It's actually quite powerful, right? You have all of your standard sliders here. It looks pretty reminiscent to Lightroom. If you go ahead and drag these, you have all your raw controls that you normally would. You have curves, HSL, color grading, detail, grain, lens correction, color calibration. You can do local masking as well. So really it's a fully fledged editing software as well. All right, so let's talk about cost. This software will cost you as little as 5 cents per photo. So if your standard deliverable is 50 photos, that's $2.50. If your standard deliverable is 100 photos like I do for my portrait sessions, that is only $5 per session. And if you're delivering like, let's say 1,000 photo album, that's still only $50. That is significantly cheaper than hiring a human, an editor, to edit your photos for you. Now, obviously, in the long run, having a dedicated editor who knows your style, who knows your retouching preferences in your process and workflow, that's gonna be better. But that's gonna cost you significantly more. So if you're somebody who's building your photography business or running a solo operation like I am, this is kind of like that stopgap between not having an editor to having an editor. There's a surprising large gap there. And what this allows you to do is start competing with those big photography agencies when it comes to volume. All right, so back to pricing, here's how it works. Evoto doesn't charge a subscription. Evoto doesn't even charge you to just have fun, mess around, and edit a photo. It's only when you're going, hey, I like the results of what Evoto did. I wanna export this photo, right? You're gonna click on export up here. When you click on export, it will utilize credits that you purchased in order to export these photos. And on screen is a list of their current credit packages they're selling, which comes out to as expensive as 7 cents a photo, or if you buy in bulk, as cheap as 4.5 cents a photo. If you're interested in checking out Evoto AI, I'll have the link in the description down below. All right, that's it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something. Fun fact, did you know that if you're on the desktop version of YouTube and I say hit that like button, the like button will actually light up. So it's a good reason to go ahead and hit that like button. And let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think of AI retouching. Let's have a conversation. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.